Colin, thank you very much indeed. I'm glad that somebody at least understands all the technical stuff, because for sure I'm not that person. Very briefly, and this whole conversation will be brief, because I would love for people to probably by this stage they're almost Brexited out, but to at least think about it and throw any questions so we can actually have a conversation about it. I think a lot of the things that have been said so far today have been from the platform as words of wisdom. Well, honestly, there are no words of wisdom about Brexit at the moment. So with that sort of starter, I would say my name is Howard Knott. I've been involved with the Irish Exporters Association in different roles for an extremely long time. My real life job was mainly in the shipping business, and then when I ceased having that, I started doing some work with the REA on the logistics and supply chain area, developing the Supply Chain Ireland operation. I also scribble in magazine book Fleet Transport on matters maritime and general commentary on the freight transport industry. So with those
is to just give a general picture leading into this issue of Brexit. On the left, we've got the big picture, the things that are happening in the world outside the world of freight transport, but of which all of which impact to a greater or lesser degree on what's coming and what we should be doing. So I think the first one is probably ultimately the most important. The business about the COP21, the sustainability, the green agenda, the supply chain with low carbon, the whole longer question of carbon credits, the whole business of reducing the pollution levels in the world, and adjusting the way in which transport chains work so as to reduce the pollution involved in that. A major factor that has been a great help to the transport industry over the last 4 or 5 years has been the precipitous, particularly in the last 3 years, precipitous drop in oil prices. But they hit a bottom about January of this year, and since that time they've doubled. Now, if you're buying petrol in the local tow paths, this might not be immediately obvious, because the taxman has got his big paw in there and he is confusing the figures. But the actual figure that, for example, the shipping lines will pay for the oil that they use, the cost has doubled. The oil price is about $50 a barrel at the moment. This has got one particular implication that we should mention, which is that if you are shipping in the North Sea, English Channel.
Now that's much easier. Thanks. Yeah, if you're shipping into continental Europe, you're going down the English Channel into the North Sea, or even to North America, you hit what's known as the second area, which is low emissions sulfur air control area, and in order for ships to operate through that, they either must clean the exhaust gases, or else burn a much lower sulfur fuel. Simply put, that doubles the price. So when the price is terribly low, that's not a big issue. If the price begins to rise, then that does become a serious issue, and it's something to be watched out for. Yeah, politics, more confused, nothing to say about that, it's obvious. And I suppose the World Cup and the Olympics, nothing to say really about that. It was probably seen as possibly a big issue, but apart from some domestic items, it hasn't really been very difficult. But the big one is the bottom one. UK voting for Brexit and then wondering what in heaven's name they did. So if we move across to our own area, the supply chain picture, there's good and bad amongst it. Some of you will be aware the Union Customs Code has now come into effect since May, and this is the first really root and branch rationalisation of the whole customs procedures for maybe about 20 years, and it has done an enormous amount to simplify and make the whole customs operations on a virtually global basis far more rational and sensible. So that was a very good thing. There is a slight question as to whether our near neighbours will actually sign the bit of paper that says we're part of this, and that's out there. The TIR convention, you have to be older probably to be aware of this particular thing as being very important, but it was at a time, it is simply a device where a trailer with goods on it can be cleared for transit through third countries with the appropriate seals from customs and the manufacturer on it, and can operate through and without being stopped and examined and messed about on the way. Coincidentally with Brexit, China decided to sign up for this. The Russians are already part of it. So you have most major countries are now part of the convention or will accept this transit documentation. And this is something that suddenly could become important again in a post-Brexit situation where you are trying to run a truck from Ireland across to the continent. So then you have the verified gross mass. This was that when you ship a container from a lift-on, lift-off container from Ireland to a destination, be it Britain or be it further afield, or indeed ship one back in again, you've got to be able to verify exactly how heavy that container is. I'm not going into all of that. Graham O'Reilly talked about it this morning, but simply put, the reason for doing this is that people very often just took a total flyer as to what the weight of the cargo was, and you finished up with containers weighing double what the paperwork said. And you know, if you're a kid playing with your bricks, and if you put a very heavy one on top of a whole bunch of lighter ones, the whole lot will collapse. Well, the same thing was happening in ships with a rather more disastrous effect. So that has been introduced. It's working reasonably well. There's been a 3-month sort of go softly approach. That finishes on the 1st of October. But realistically, it seems that people have taken the message and people are being correct about the weights of what's in it. So that's good. You have not good. You have the Hanyang, pardon the pronunciation, shipping line, the South Korean line going bust suddenly a fortnight ago. Well, it wasn't sudden. People could see things were getting worse and worse and worse, but they did pull the plug, and everything came to a stop. Massive concerns globally because they had up to 100 ships all busily carrying TVs and other electronic equipment from South Korea to the rest of the world for the Christmas market, and suddenly the Christmas wasn't going to happen for most of the world. That has been sort of sorted out with guarantees from the South Korean government. But it's more serious than that, because it's just the one shipping line that has actually gone bust. The majority of the deep sea shipping lines are virtually bust. So we've got a situation where rates have come right down to virtually nothing, and certainly on the export side they are nearly nothing, but they now, if the shipping lines are to succeed, they'll have to go up, and if they go up, that's not good for exporters. I see signs, so I better shut up. We move on quickly. Domestically, big thing, rail freight is one of the issues where we've been involved in the IEA. Irish Rail have at last moved up, moved their game up several notches. They're now able to operate trains that are 50% longer and 50% heavier than has been the case up to now. It makes it a viable operation. It probably could make it competitive with road transport within Ireland in certain areas. So that's a good thing. The 10T, that's the European Connecting Europe Facility money, has been used to develop, in an Irish case, a particular project involving compressed natural gas for use for trucks on the main highways, Belfast, Dublin, Cork, that area, and will be gone further afield. So you will see over the next few years road transport moving across onto a much more low pollution level. So let's think just quickly about what the shipping implications are of Brexit, or some of them anyway. If you're shipping to Britain, and beyond, but just mainly focused on Britain, first thing to say is the obvious one: Brexit has not happened yet. Heaven knows when it really will happen. At the moment, and for the next few years, Britain is a full part of the community, and all the community rules and regulations apply there. But you see the figures here. You know how important Britain is for Irish goods, Irish exporters, and indeed for Irish importers. It's the sort of thing you forget, but the last line is probably the one that becomes normally invisible, that it is very important. What might the supply chain to Britain look like after Brexit? Well, first of all, trailer traffic destined for Britain probably will continue to grow, various shipping lines, but because there's less cargo, there'll be less, that growth will be rather slower. The hauliers that use Britain as a land bridge across to the continent may seek alternative routes, just to avoid the hassle. The growth in traffic using low-load containers, that's the lift-on, lift-off containers, will continue to British ports that are rail connected and have regular services to the retail distribution centres, because it doesn't really get entangled up in too much bureaucracy. Air freight volumes to Britain will remain minimal, they hardly happen anyway, and they will probably reduce further as technology in the surface transport area advances. And the use of British airports for cargo for long-haul destinations will certainly become more difficult. Moving to the continent, the railroad services are already growing very quickly, and CLDN, who have that ship there in the picture, they have increased their services from a few years ago, where they had one or two ships a week, to 7 ships a week from Ireland. As new ships come from the shipyard, there will be more availability of possibilities to ship direct to the continent. The low-load services, again, will be able to carry increased volumes linking into the continental rail and barge network. And the air freight volumes with the integrators using regular airlines will increase to meet the demands of high-end farmer products. So all fairly good there. Quickly to the deep sea areas. Picture the small ship. It's a small typical feeder ship that would come from an Irish port, collect the containers, bring them to a transit port, be it Rotterdam, Antwerp or Southampton, and then transfer it to the big guy behind, or some variation on that. So air freight will continue to move via continental airports, but the rapid development of air services out of Ireland directly to the Middle East and to Asia, to Africa, and even possibly to Asia, will mean that more cargo will actually fly directly out of Irish airports, which is good. What can the EU do? Well, there are lots of EU programs which basically, the money is there if people feel they need to develop the road, rail, port, airport, and sort of general infrastructure to help the transport industry. It's there. We are beginning to understand how to work that business. Our people 20, 30 years ago in Ireland were experts at getting money out of Europe. We got a bit lazy about it. I think we're getting back into gear on this one. Now we're on the last real slide. Are there any other issues? Well, transit and other vehicle taxes in the UK. We already pay £10 a day for an Irish truck, so that's there already. Different vehicle weights and strict policing of Irish vehicles in transit, that happens already. Customs control we talk about, and vehicle delays, well, the TIR and the Universal Customs Code may be part of the answer to that. Unfair rules on drivers' working conditions, some of the ones in France are completely daft. These already exist elsewhere in the EU and are more than a Brexit issue. Is there help and advice to hand? Of course there is. Once the timetable becomes clear, then we can really begin to push into getting the answers. In our own supply chain group, This is one of the things we've already started working with. We have very active communications with the EU, the Department of Transport, Revenue, Ports, etc. So it is an ongoing thing. You will hear more about this over the next 3 or 4 years. You'll be bored to tears about it, but it is being worked on. And we are involved in a project at the moment, by coincidence, on east-west transit from Ireland across into Europe and further, an east-west corridor project, which will, I think, ultimately be of huge advantage to Irish exporters who are seeking knowledge of new markets that they have to get into. So, ladies and gentlemen, a very quick run through. Thank you very much indeed for your attention, and any questions, I'm delighted